I thought it might be useful to talk about fundamental attribution error, which essentially means that we have a tendency to judge people based on a minimal amount of information. So, for example, let's say someone cuts across you in a meeting whilst you're in the middle of a sentence. Now, according to fundamental attribution error theory, we would presume that that's who that individual is. That is their character. That is their personality. They are rude. They are disrespectful. Now, there are people who criticize fundamental attribution error theory and don't believe that we are quite like that. In fact, we're more subtle, more nuanced in our dealings with others. Now, I tend to agree with that. However, I also think that it doesn't take much of a push for us to fall into such crude labeling. And that push can be because of time. And what I mean by that is that, let's say you attend another meeting and the individual cuts across you again, maybe a meeting after that. How long does it take before we're looking out for that behaviour? How long does it take before we're waiting on it? And that then can become confirmation bias. And even although this individual says this thing at exactly the same time as other people and interrupts in a similar way and in a similar tone of voice, because we're already looking through the lens of this individual is rude, this individual is disrespectful, then we can interpret that, we can process those behaviours, that behaviour as being just that. It confirms our theory that we were right fundamentally at the beginning. They are just rude. That's just who they are. And that is such a dangerous trap for all of us to get into, because more and more we're being fractured along different fault lines. It's so important to find things in common, to get along where possible. And if someone is in charge, is in a position of influence, one could argue this is even more important, because if they get biased in that way, based on snap decisions, snap judgments, then that can have a detrimental effect that can cast a large shadow, because other people spot this and it can make them feel uncomfortable. And of course, the person on the receiving end who may be being treated unfairly can be crushed by such behaviours. That is not a psychologically safe environment. And so I would encourage all of us to take a big step back. If we're irked by someone or annoyed, then just pause. Think for a second about those things that you like about this individual or perhaps admire. Consider also getting into conversation with them, finding out more about them, spending time, finding those things in common. I know it's a hackneyed phrase, but it does help. And then you may find that the individual is nothing like you thought they were. And I would also suggest that we are very quick to judge, or can be. And when we're quick to judge and we label people in negative ways, the positive ways tend to be the halo effect, but that's another conversation for another time. When we label people in negative ways, what we're doing is potentially dismissing the fact that this individual can be struggling. We don't know what they're going through. They may be having to traverse a hellscape of a life behind the scenes, the likes of which we could barely even contemplate. So let's all practice not being so quick to make assumptions and to judge.